Hey guys, this is Chris from Rekkid Talk, and so I've got a vinyl tag for you. And so this is going to be the GOAT tag. And so if you're confused, of course, GOAT means the greatest of all time. GOAT, greatest of all time. And that's for those of you in the vinyl community that are not hip to young slang, which I think actually describes everybody who's watching my channel. Now, know most of you think vinyl tags are only a January thing. They come out right at the beginning of the year. You do it and then you forget about it for another year, but that's not true. So you can do vinyl tags all year long. And so I'm going to present the GOAT tag for you. I'm going to have several prompts, I think about 15 or so, an opportunity for you to show your GOATs. And so the first GOAT is your GOAT singer-songwriter. And for me, there's really only one choice for my GOAT singer-songwriter. It's Linda Ronstadt. I mean, she wears roller skates and tube socks, and she's living in the USA. And look at all of these classic songs written by Linda. Okay, maybe one or two of them, or all 10, or basically everything she ever sang in her career was actually a cover song. Okay, so maybe she's a singer. All right, GOAT blues guitarist. And so I think the obvious choice here is Eric Clapton. I mean, Eric Clapton is the man who invented the blues back when he was in the Yardbirds. And then what happened was that there were acoustic folk guitars from around the world, a lot of them from like the Southeast United States, various other places kind of picked up, that kind of stole his style. I know an example of that was guys like Muddy Waters and Michael Bloomfield and Paul Butterfield and Donald Duck Dunn. And you've got Albert King and Stevie Ray Vaughan. See, look, they picked up electric guitars, and they were all doing it because they wanted to copy the GOATs. Eric Clapton, the GOAT of the blues guitar. And Eric Clapton has been a huge inspiration for blues lawyers everywhere that just can't wrap their heads around Joe Bonamassa's avant-garde stylings. GOAT drummer. So Roland. Roland is the GOAT drummer of all time. Roland was like a one-man wrecking crew for percussion back in the 1980s, appearing on most of the great albums of the 1980s, such as Big Black's songs about farming. And so I really wish Roland would make a comeback. Your GOAT punk album. And so my GOAT punk album of all time is Green Day Dookie. I mean, it's got that song Longview about when masturbation's lost its fun. And so I have it on a cassette, which makes you know that I'm a real punk and I'm not some Johnny Rotten come lately that's buying a modern reissue of the Ramones or shelling out hundreds of dollars for OG 7-inch singles by the Misfits. Those are posers. See, this is not a poser. GOAT store. So if you could only shop at one store for your records for the rest of your life, what would you pick? Walmart or Acoustic Sounds? Well, Walmart has the classics in nifty colors. Oh, look. Holly Dolly Christmas in nifty colors. But Acoustic Songs has the high prices and the Whiplash mailers that prove you are buying an audiophile record, not some poorly pressed piece of crap. And in fact, you're going to get records, you're going to get these extremely rare records that they've dug up from the archives that you just can't get anywhere else, like A Love Supreme by John Coltrane. You're only going to get that at Acoustic Sounds. You're not going to get that at Walmart. You're not going to get that at a thrift store. You're not going to get that at your regular independent record store. It's Acoustic Sounds and the Whiplash mailers for the win. They're the GOAT. GOAT metal album. So, of course, I like the classic artists. I'm not into like your newer metal. I'm not into like Eastern European symphonic metal with some hot chick screeching at the top of her lungs, or some Scandinavian misfits growling like Cookie Monsters. I mean, and they're wearing face paint. It's like, don't they have goth in Northern Europe so they can do goth rather than metal? And so of course, I like the original English bands who did heavy metal. So, of course, my favorite of all time is, of course, Jethro Tull. Crest of a Knave, which you can see was a Grammy Award winner for the best heavy metal album ever. And we all use the Grammys to define goatness in various musical categories, because the Grammys never, ever make a mistake. Okay, so now we've got our GOAT country album. And so I'm going to go with Kenny Rogers' Greatest Hits. And this was a very close category. This narrowly beat out Mel Tillis's Greatest Hits, George Jones's Greatest Hits, Charlie Pride's Greatest Hits, and Ronnie Millsap's Greatest Hits. I also consider Jeannie C. Riley's Harper Valley PTA, which sometimes is referred to as Jeannie C. Riley's Greatest Hit. But I'm going to go with Kenny Rogers' Greatest Hits. Okay, GOAT Alternative Album. So, of course, your GOAT Alternative Album has to be on a CD. And so, of course, it's going to be... and she was pretty close in Singer-Songwriter as well. Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill. I mean, there's the pathos of what it's like to be the spurned girlfriend of Uncle Joey. And this just narrowly beat out Chris Gaines' Greatest Hits, by the way. GOAT Disco Song. And so I'm a little bit embarrassed that I don't have this in my collection, but the obvious choice is by Kiss off Kiss Dynasty, I Was Made for Loving You. And so it combines that thumping dance beat of a Giorgio Moroder classic. So you've got Gene Simmons on bass and Peter Criss on drums, laying down that rhythm section. It's just wonderful. And then to make it even better, you've got the raw animalistic appeal of Paul Stanley with his hairy chest. And of course, Paul Stanley's doing what Paul Stanley does best. He's following that year's trend. So that's the GOAT Disco Song. The GOAT Rock and Roll Song of all time. So it's not from the 50s. It's actually from the 80s. It's on Rock and Roll Records. And it's Eat It by Weird Al Yankovic. And in fact, Michael Jackson did a cover of this song as well. But my choice for best rock and roll record of all time is Eat It by Weird Al Yankovic. So the GOAT pop song of all time. So when I'm thinking pop songs, I'm thinking about the new wave of British pop. And one of my favorite bands from the new wave of British pop is Def Leppard. Now this is like Kiss Dynasty is another one that I'm a little bit embarrassed I don't own the album that the greatest pop song, the GOAT pop song of all time came out on. But of course, it's Pour Some Sugar on Me by Def Leppard. As we all know, 50 million lap dances can't be wrong. All right, and then let's pick our GOAT musical artist of all time. We're going to pick one of these two artists as our GOAT, and this is like the whole Desert Island discography thing. You can only have the discography of one of them. And so obviously the two obvious choices are the Beatles and Elvis Presley. And so it was a very tough decision for me. It really came down to the deep tracks for me. So with the Beatles, you've got deep tracks like Wild Honey Pie and Revolution 9. And versus, well, I can't really think of any Elvis deep tracks off the top of my head. So I don't really think there are any Elvis deep tracks. And so I think Elvis is the GOAT. Because there are no deep tracks. They're all hits. 50 million peanut butter and banana sandwiches can't be wrong. So the GOAT holiday song of all time is, of course, by Elmo and Patsy. Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. Don't give in to like Mariah Carey. It's Elmo and Patsy. The GOAT comedy album of all time. And so these are two albums that were so popular, you can find copies of them all over the place because they sold maybe more copies than Hotel California. There's Von Meter's First Family, but my choice is going to be Knockers Up by Rusty Warren. This is the hilarious comedy album that has Mr. and Mrs. America rolling on the floor from coast to coast. And it turns out that I'm a sucker for vague double entendre. That might have made my grandma laugh. And Rusty was smart enough not to bank her career on jokes about a politician where something bad might happen to the politician, but instead to bank her career on boob jokes. And don't even bring up the Putin Pop guy when we're talking about this. So the GOAT album of all time, well, I mean, everybody talks about this album. Every thrift store has this album. Record store owners devote an entire wall to this album. So yes, of course, the GOAT album of all time is GOAT by the Jesus Lizard. I bought it just for this video.